Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 368, and today's guest is Matthias Hofmann, co-founder and CEO of iBot. I met Matthias and Jack, iBot's co-founder and CTO, at a pre-party for a TechCrunch event in Boston a couple of years ago. It was one of those meetings that when someone describes their product to you, that being an AI-powered kiosk that could conduct vision tests in just 90 seconds, it sounded like something out of science fiction. But it did make you pause and think, what if they could actually build this? The market opportunity is incredibly massive, like a total addressable market with everyone in the world massive. On top of that, here are some crazy stats in terms of the void in the market that needs to be addressed with a solution. 40,000 eye doctor positions are unfilled in the United States. That means more doctors are retiring than graduating from school. 25% of U.S. counties don't have a practicing eye care provider. 63% of Americans don't have vision insurance. Well, this product and solution became a reality when iBot announced its partnership with Zenni Optical by deploying their kiosks in various locations, and as you'll hear from Matthias, the pipeline of demand for their kiosks is incredibly strong. Another crazy stat that he shared with me is that the team at iBot is only 14 people. It's another perfect example of the level of innovation in the Boston tech scene, with several next-generation hardware and robotics companies that are emerging, like 10 Beauty, Oslo Sleep Buds, Pickle Robot, and many more. iBot raised a $6 million seed round of funding last year, led by Alicorp and Ubiquity Ventures, with participation from other top investors. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like iBot's first appearance at CES this year and advice on how to create a buzz, Matthias's background story and how positions at iNetra and Formlabs helped shape his career, the full story of iBot and the challenges in the market that they are addressing, how their technology works, plus their go-to-market strategy, and details on funding, advice for founders on building hardware and raising capital, and so much more. All right, now a brief word from our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm excited to share that this podcast is brought to you by one of the strongest longtime supporters of the local startup ecosystem, that being Silicon Valley Bank, a division of First Citizens Bank. SVB serves innovative tech, healthcare, and life sciences companies, including 60% of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list, 72% of Forbes Cloud 100 list, and 48% of Forbes AI 50 list companies. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Matthias. Matthias, thanks so much for joining us.
How's it going?
It's going great. I don't know if you remember this, but we met. So Underscore had a pre-party before one of the TechCrunch Boston events, which was awesome. Great event. I ran into you and your co-founder, Jack, and I think, I had a drink with Jack, and he was telling me what you guys were building, and I was just like, wow. It wasn't in market yet, but I'm just like, this sounds amazing. So to see your company get to the point where you had a booth at CES is just like you're in market. So we're going to talk about iBot and what you guys are doing, which is absolutely extraordinary. And it's one of the main reasons why I love all the good stuff that's happening in the Boston tech scene right now. So let's talk about CES, though. I've never talked about this topic on VentureFizz before. What is it like being there, planning a booth, you had a kiosk that was just like constantly filled with people getting eye exams. So what was that experience like, and what advice do you have for future founders planning something similar?
Awesome. Thanks. Yes, I'm Matthias, CEO, co-founder of iBot. And I could talk, of course, about the history of this. We can do that in the next segment. But CES was actually our first booth. We strategically decided to pick a good point to unveil what we're doing until we're really ready. Because what we are doing is very complex, very challenging on a technical side, but also on marketing and sort of storytelling side, because it is an area that has in the past has seen a lot of pushback from some of the older guard when it comes to the industry. And we want to make sure that we're absolutely ready to tell our story the way we want to tell it, and frankly, how we see vision care evolving. We showed at CES that our core mission at iBot is to make vision care accessible to all equally. And that is currently not the case, not in the United States. In fact, worldwide, it's a massive, massive problem where, for example, in the United States alone, you have 50% of people roughly actually have vision insurance. The lower third of income level in the United States is half as likely to go see an eye doctor than the other Americans. And there's just too many discrepancies, and there's just simply not enough doctors. In the United States, there's a massive doctor shortage. Something like 10,000 optometrists are missing that need to get slotted into stores and clinics. About 30,000 ophthalmologists shortage. There's openings right now. So in total, about 40,000 open positions for eye doctors. And they just don't exist. And actually, there's less over time. There's more doctors retiring today than coming out of school. And the population is growing. And our children are also becoming more myopic. So that gap just keeps growing. And it was true 10 years ago, and it's true today even worse. And it's going to keep growing. So we wanted to make sure at CES that people understand what we're solving, and we have the right message that we are here to solve this problem and here to alleviate this shortage. And that's how we approached CES and preparing for it as well. We basically, I think it took us about 6 months of preparation. So in the summer, so CES is in early January. So in the summer of last year, we all sat together and we decided, I think with some vodka martinis, about, are we going to do CES or not? Are we ready? And we said, well, yeah, let's push the button and do it. And so it took us about 6 months of, prep, not a tremendous amount of prep, but the booth, you hire a booth manufacturer, and then you negotiate. Ideally, you get 3. You have to have your design firm. We happen to already have our design figured out, our style guide. So we just applied that to the booth manufacturer. And then you have 3 different booth designers that you negotiate with and try to get the best price. But it's not cheap. CES is expensive. I can't disclose all the numbers, but overall, it's an investment. And then CES doesn't really help you at all with prep. They're just like, here's the plot. You got to reserve your plot early. We also saw that our plot was right next to EssilorLuxottica. We picked that. It was an open space. So we're like, hey, we're neutral for the industry. We're not taking sides. Right. But we also wanted to show that we can swing big, and that we did. We had the longest lines on the Venetian main floor by far.
And I saw your post on LinkedIn. So you had 1,141 vision tests delivered. So,
yeah,
we
were a little nervous. We were a little nervous before we started, if people understood this, or even we actually didn't have that great of a location because we were kind of hidden behind the EssilorLuxottica booth. Turns out the minute CES opened, we had a line, and it magically appeared, and then we had a line until the show closed. I mean, it was just 0 minutes of downtime.
That is extraordinary, and it's just. I'm sure seeing it in person, it must have created a buzz where people are just telling people, "Oh, you gotta go check out iBot. You get a free eye exam," and I mean, it just word spreads, and it just must have been because I was reading a lot of the media coverage, and you were constantly here are the top 10 things I saw at CES. Which you think of how many companies and how many different AI technology, cars, whatever flavor of technology, and then you were in that top 10. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think we made ZDNet's number 1, and number 2 was NVIDIA. So,
yes,
that was a pretty good one.
So let's talk about your background story. So where'd you grow up? What were you like as a child?
Yeah, so I was born in Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland. It's a complicated story, but I'll leave some things out for brevity. Moved around a lot, but basically born and raised in Switzerland until age of 18. And then I moved to the United States for college. Was intending to just go for college and then go back. Turns out I was pretty good at building stuff, and so I was pushed towards doing a master's degree. I did the master's degree in Virginia. And then my master's advisor was like, hey, I have this awesome project in tissue engineering and you're good at building stuff. So why don't you do a PhD? And so, okay. So I did that and I was able to do a PhD pretty quickly. And I ended up for a postdoc position at Harvard Medical School in Boston, where I moved to with my wife. So we moved to Boston. I did that for 1 year, and a very pivotal moment in my career or in my life is I went to a function at the school, and I ran into a guy that just started his vision care company, and it's an MIT spin out, and with all these amazing investors, and I was of course immediately like, wow, this is something I want to be doing as well. And I think 2 weeks later, I joined that startup, which was called iNetra at the time. And so hung up my academic coat. And I was like, this is, I've been writing research papers up until that moment, getting government funding, which is all great. But I never felt like I was building stuff that people were using. And I want to build things that change people's lives. Now, everything I've done, even in academia, has been about, I've worked in cancer research, tissue engineering, and in my postdoc, it was mammography. So it was always very purpose driven and mission driven to, help people. But I never felt like that the work that I did was directly leading to people getting a change. And so that's why I was so enamored by the idea of a startup where the thing that you build is actually going to go into people's hands. And so that was 11 years ago. Yeah. Smartphone-based vision exams were a hot topic back then already because all of a sudden people in 2012, Apple showed the way with smartphones. But of course, not shortly after, actually, Samsung came with Android and Google came with Android. And so all of a sudden, everybody had a smartphone in their pocket. Around 2012, 2013, it was well proliferated. And all of a sudden, the question was around mHealth. What can this thing do besides Facebook at the time or whatever Instagram started? What else can this thing do? This machine, this computer that's in your pocket. And there was excitement around, well, it has a screen, it has a high resolution screen, it has all these like sensors on it, has like high resolution cameras, selfie cameras, and all these things. Can we do that to do health exams? And then to us, the question was, can that phone be used as a platform to do vision testing and vision exams? How far can you push it? And so we spent a lot of R&D time on coming up with different strategies using smartphones to do eye testing and getting to eyeglass prescriptions. So we were the first smartphone-based test to get past the FDA and also get to market. And tons of inventions back then that we came up with and ideas from pure software solutions with a smartphone to hardware snap-ons. We built all that stuff. We built everything possible under the sun that you could do with a smartphone. And what we brought to market was well tested, was accurate if used correctly. But the thing that we could not anticipate was people could not use it right. And there was no good adoption because if you use it wrong, the results are bad and you have no way to know if the results are bad. And then it became clear to us that it's a user interface problem. Yes, technology needs to get solved and there's got to be algorithms, but that's all solvable in some instance, in some way. Where really the biggest problem is actually that Barbara and Bob don't want to figure out how to use a complicated hacky solution on something that's not actually a medical device. And that's the thing that's not so obvious. And it didn't work the way we wanted to. We tested on thousands of people in the clinic, in the office, and we learned so much for people. And it's a user interface problem. That's what we left with. And already back then in 2015, we knew that the smartphone is not going to be the platform that is going to unlock prescriptions for eyeglasses. It's a tough sandwich to eat, but it's just the reality of things. And that is still true today. We realize it's a tar pit idea. It's one of those on the surface sexy idea of like, oh my God, you could do prescriptions from a cell phone. But once you realize it can't be done in a realistic way, there's 20 other companies that followed after us that all fell into that same trap. They all died on the same hill. And it's the Hall of Fame tar pit idea. Yeah.
All right. So that you learned a ton.
I left. Yeah, I learned. You got to learn the hard way. But there's so much we learned about the vision care industry, about how to make telemedicine work across the board, different states. Tons of stuff we learned. And so I took that with me with a chip on my shoulder. And I joined another company called Formlabs. Formlabs is a Boston-based startup. For those that don't know, it was at the time the biggest Kickstarter. I think it was a $3 million Kickstarter, which I think it's now been obviously eclipsed by other companies. But at the time, it was a huge deal. And it's basically a stereolithography 3D printers, taking something that traditionally would cost like a $500,000 machine somewhere in a corporate headquarters, could now be done for $3,000 on your desktop. And I won't get into the nitty-gritty details on how.
Max, the founder CEO, was on the VentureFizz podcast. So go through the archives of VentureFizz if you do want to hear the full Formlab story, because that's another great one. Sorry. I had to plug it.
I joined that company. I don't exactly what employee number I was, but it was somewhere double digits. And that grew exponentially fast. So I learned a lot along the way about like how to design, develop hardware, and also at scale. So from napkin ideas to really production of like, well, how can you build 50,000 of something, right, in this amount of time? And so a lot of experience from there. After some years at Formlabs, I joined a cancer research startup. So my mom, this is a personal thing. My mom went through breast cancer, and sort of this is the thread that goes through my life is that I'm always focused on, helping people. And that includes, of course, like near and dear family members. And I decided to go into cancer research again. And the startup is called Lumicell. And the biggest problem in cancer surgery is actually knowing how much to cut out from the patient and where the margins are of the cancer. Because to even a trained eye, it's just the tissue looks the same and it's hard to tell. There aren't really any good ways to remove cancer without cutting out too much during surgery. So what Lumicell does is actually provide an imaging solution for the surgeon to scan in real time during the surgery what is cancer and what is not cancer. And it's done through, you inject this contrast agent into the body, goes through your body. The contrast agent sticks to the cancer cells and starts glowing effectively. And then through the right imaging technology, you can then locate the cancer during surgery. So I did that, and throughout this whole time, I kept thinking back. I had a great time at Formlabs. It was such a great learning opportunity. Same with Lumicell, such a great learning opportunity. But then I always look back of like, gosh, we never really solved this vision care thing. And the problem is bigger today than it was when I started then. And we haven't even talked about the problem. I think that most listeners will understand. In fact, about 70% of humans don't see could see better with prescription eyewear. This is the most common human disorder, basically not seeing perfect. So, 8 billion humans, over 4 billion humans struggle to access eyeglasses on this planet. And it's just an enormous TAM, enormous opportunity.
It's
And
everybody. Like everybody.
Basically everybody.
Hypothetically, everybody should have an eye test. I know that's not the numbers that you're going to talk about, but your total addressable market is everybody on the planet. So it's massive. You're like the perfect scenario for like a venture capitalist dream. The founder that can't sleep at night because this problem is just eating away at your brain, and you can solve it.
It's been marinating my brain. Before we started that company, before we started iBot, it was marinating my brain probably for 7 years. This interface problem that we could never get past with smartphones. And at the time I realized, like, well, what if we just build the right interface and then figure out what the technology needs to be? We'll figure that out later. But first, let's figure out what people actually want. And through that process, I went into, it was like COVID started, and I went into Makerspace. I started hacking, came up with a prototype, called up my old friend from Formlabs, Jack, who became my co-founder. I was like, hey, Jack, I got a thing. You should come check it out. He came in, and this is a true story. Jack comes in. He's like, I've never had an eye exam in my life. And it's like, oh, you should check. It's like, I don't need glasses. Yeah, let's check. And he checks, and he's like, hey, Jack, you have astigmatism, dude. Let's fix this. And I happened to just luckily have the right kind of trial kit and put some lenses together. I put it on his face, and he looks around and goes, whoa. And I was like, yeah, Jack. This is what you've been missing out on. The whole world
has been blurry. The whole world's been blurry. Yeah. I never knew.
And it almost gets me a little bit emotional because right at that moment, Jack and we looked at each other like, hey, this whole thing sucks. Like this whole industry, getting to glasses, getting to vision care, it sucks. And everybody knows it sucks. And as it turns out, as we later realized too, the retailers trying to sell the glasses also say, this situation sucks. And so Jack and I looked at each other and were like, let's just solve it. Let's just solve this problem. And so we went to town and started building different prototypes. Actually, the very first prototype that we put out there, we built in his apartment. And I just hacked it together with, Arduinos and stuff. And we put it in a shopping center. It barely worked, but we didn't care because we just wanted to see that people actually cared. And
you put it in a shopping center?
Yeah, it's pretty guerrilla. Yeah, I can't say which one. They will probably chase us if I told them that it didn't work as intended yet. But yeah, we didn't even have any venture funding. We had nothing. It's just two guys in a bathtub coming up with some crazy ideas. And we patched this thing together. We put it in a shopping center in the Boston area. They were gracious enough to just give us that opportunity. And we put up the right signage. We said, free vision test. Here's a thing. And people just lined up. It was crazy. And yeah, this is... just to know, like, to see, like, the amount of demand that there's out there right now for this kind of thing is unbelievable. Like, we're seeing all cultures, like, young, old, skinny, big, Latino, Asian, white, black, everybody, young, old, rich, poor, everything. It's just across the board. And children, like moms, bringing their kids in tow to like get their eyes checked. I'm like, the fact that this is a thing, the fact that like our box is like getting that kind of traction, we just knew like that we're onto something pretty big. And so then that's the moment when we started chasing, of course, venture capital, which we're able to raise money, and then the story continues. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking differently, like the Apple ad said, and it's making it accessible. And that you said some of the stats when we started our conversation, but these are stats I gathered from your website. So 40,000 unfilled eye doctor positions in the U.S. So there's more doctors retiring than graduating. 25% of U.S. Counties don't have a practicing eye care provider, which was shocking to see that. 63% of Americans don't have vision insurance. Um, so it's just, you hear those numbers just in the United States, it's
Exactly.
staggering. It's
Yeah.
staggering.
And
So,
that's a developed nation, right? We consider
yeah.
ourselves a first world country, but I mean, let's look at the numbers. This is not good. And it's just a massive opportunity. And so I can also kind of break down, what the problem is and the way we see the verticals here. But you got all these optical stores. There's like 45,000 optical stores. Roughly half can't find the right doctor, can't find a doctor. Oftentimes they're called dark stores, and in the industry it's called dark stores or dim stores when the doctor's maybe in once a week or something like that. But that's actually the reason why it's so frustrating to get an appointment to get glasses. And so people have to plan, they have to schedule, they have to spend hours and not hours, they have to spend, 2 weeks or 4 weeks to schedule and plan this out just to finally get to the point to being able to buy glasses. And glasses is as essential as shoes. Like you should be able to just buy glasses like you buy shoes, but it's not true today. And as it turns out, it's also a huge international problem too. They can't find refractionists, they can't find qualified people. I could talk about our inbound from all over the world later. And then the other big opportunity that we see is if it's true that like you can get a prescription and make optical retail possible without the doctor being inside the store through iBot technology, then that means you can actually sell eyeglasses anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we see this massive blue ocean opportunity where on a sudden you can sell glasses in airports. On a sudden you can sell glasses in grocery, in H&M. Why not? Why can't you sell glasses in apparel? What we are trying to do is make glasses sales so easy that it's like buying shoes. That you can just walk into a store and you can look at the merchandise, the different pairs of glasses, and if you like what you want, then and you don't have your numbers with you, you just get the numbers in 90 seconds. You just push a button. And that's what we're after. So we
Cool.
want to make eyeglass buying like buying shoes.
I hope you are enjoying this interview. Just a brief word from our sponsor. As a longtime champion in the local startup ecosystem, Silicon Valley Bank supports innovative companies with the solutions and financing they need through every stage of growth. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. That's perfect segue because I'm sure if I was listening to this podcast, I'd be like, okay, how does this work? Like we've given a taste with CES, and you just talked a little bit about it, but how does the kiosk actually work?
Yeah. So what we also learned early on at iNetra is that to do a high quality prescription requires actually it's a art and a science. And this is what many people don't understand is one machine, maybe an auto refractor is not going to give you necessarily the result that you want or the right kind of fit that you want. Some people want a different kind of balance on their glasses, or they want to have it maybe a little bit underpowered. I like to go all the way. I like to go eagle vision, max out my retina. I want like 20/10 all the way. That's how I correct myself. But we want to have all that knowledge and experience that doctors have with over 10 years of experience be translated into the way we write prescriptions. So all that experience goes into every iBot prescription. The way we do that is it's not just a machine that does a thing. It actually collects 4 different things in 90 seconds. So we do what's called intake. Intake is who you are, health history, your preferences, your age, things like that. Then we do what's called a visual acuity test, a best corrected visual acuity test. It's very familiar to people. It's a letter test. It's not AB. Everybody hates AB. We don't do that. It's a ladder test, so we have a baseline of what your acuity is. We can also suss out certain diseases to do that. Then the third thing we do is what's called refraction. So it's what we do, a touch-free refraction. So the way to use our technology is you just stand there casually, relaxed, and you just look inside, and it does the eye scanning. It scans your eyes with safe infrared light, and we extract the prescription straight from your eyes. So you're not putting your head into a machine. You're not like doing anything complicated. That is one of the commandments at iBot is it requires no training, no learning. And we do the mom test all the time. Like basically if our moms can do it, it's working. And that's the goal, is to make it work for everybody. And the third thing is refraction. The fourth one is lensometry. So we actually, if you already have glasses, we also measure your existing glasses. Because more often than not, actually people simply want something very similar that they had before. And we take all those four pieces of information, and it goes to our AI in the cloud and crunches numbers and outcomes of prescription. And that's very close to what actually a doctor writes. And in most cases, actually identical to our own doctors as they write these prescriptions. Today, every single bought prescription by iBot is actually also reviewed by our teledoctors that are asynchronously in the cloud. And in about 70% of cases, our doctors don't make an adjustment. In about 30% of the cases, they still make maybe a post adjustment. Every time that happens, we actually retrain our model to be essentially equivalent to what a doctor does.
Awesome. So awesome. Like honestly, like, so you and Jack build a prototype. You're in market now. Like you announced a partnership earlier last year of, having this in market in stores. So how did you actually build what is available now? Like is hardware, there's software, is manufacturing. I mean, the consumer, right? It's so much involved.
It's super hard. And we've been grinding. So the way we actually got started after we did our first small, I wouldn't even call it pilot. It was like proof of concept, frankly. Was once we knew the configuration, then we knew, okay, now we need to build all this technology. And we actually got SBIR grants from the National Science Foundation. We got phase 1, phase 2, so about $1.5 million in government funding, which we used to develop this technology in the first place. And so that was about a year. And we already started actually at the clinic almost on day one. So we work with our chief medical officer, Alex, and we basically worked together now for 2.5 years in his clinic to bring a new prototype in, IRB approved study, test what works, what doesn't, go back to the drawing board. And we've been iterating now for almost 4 years, 3.5 years on R&D. And, we hit a point about a year ago where it was quite mature. And then, of course, all the products and the design, we have the manufacturing line in China. So all these things had to be set up. And we're a pretty small team still. We're actually just now, I think we hit 14 full time.
That's it? 14?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were
all
going
in
to
all,
say
about
40.
no.
Still
All in
small.
all, yeah, 14. Yeah. Not too long ago it was actually 10, but all in all, it's about 25 people involved on this project. Yeah.
Well, so you announced a $6 million seed round led by Alicorp and Ubiquity Ventures last June. What was it like meeting with investors? Because this is like you said, it's a very complex problem. If it works, this is a massive total addressable market. Yet, wait, there's a lot that could happen, go wrong, distribution, go to market. Like there's so many pieces to this. So what was the reception from VCs like initially?
Yeah, we had those concerns. Exactly. We started that raise in February last year, and we closed it, I think, in March. Or no, in May. Yeah, so it took like 3 months to raise. It was a hyper oversubscribed round. What we didn't know at the time before we started the raise, that we didn't know exactly if we de-risked enough for seed investors to understand or believe, or I think everybody understands the opportunity size, but there were, of course, plenty of questions on like, is this ready? And is this even real? Is this possible? And we threw as much evidence as we could at it at the time to prove that like it is what we say it is. Like it's the real deal. And once we convinced enough people that the round happened very fast, and we took more money than we originally planned on. But that's a choice that some companies have to make.
There's a cost, right? So once the eye exam happens, it's like $20 or $30 for the actual prescription. Is that something that if I have vision insurance that would be covered? That $20, $30?
We don't work with vision insurance. Now we are neutral as far as our stance goes across the industry. We're not taking any sides with retailers or with vision insurance providers. On one thing we're pretty open about is that we're not taking insurance for a reason right now, because our fundamental mission, and it's our mission statement. In fact, you can ask anyone here at iBot, and they will almost tell you the same thing, is that making vision care accessible to all equally, and the equally part is the important part. So in the United States, with less than 50% of people having vision insurance, that is actually a major blocker for people to even do something, to even check their eyes. And so we are pricing, for that reason, the prescription at $25, so that the prescription cost is the same as the copay rate, and it's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
So regardless of if you have insurance or no insurance, you pay the same amount.
Well, you talked about the size of the team. What's the hardest position to hire for?
That changes. The good part about doing a startup in Boston is that there's actually a lot of talent. It takes a little bit of searching. You need to have a little bit of a network. You need to dig sometimes. I think we are fortunate that Jack and I have a great network from previous engagements. We hire from people, we put actually a team together of people that we already knew. So it almost feels like we're putting a band back together kind of thing. And now, of course, we've crossed the line where we're hiring net new people. But generally, Boston has a very strong talent pool for what we're building.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It's a strength. So what's the latest of whatever you can share looking ahead for iBot?
Yeah, we launched 2 pilots, one with Zenny, one with a retailer I can't name. And both of those are going exceptionally well, and tons of engagement. And one of them is coming out of pilot, and we're expanding. We have tons of new pilots coming up as well. So we actually are 4x overbooked on our pilot units, and that's something we regret. We didn't order enough, and ordering takes time, because when you manufacture in China, you have to put them on a boat, and it has to go past some strait, and so it takes time to get to the US. So that's one thing. But we are basically gearing up manufacturing so we can churn out machines fast enough to supply our demand for this year and also next year, which will be exponential.
I still am like shocked by the size of your team. It just proves how much you can build at what level with efficiency. Like you don't need $100 million. You probably could have raised $100 million to go like build this massive team to do the same thing that a 14-person, $6 million in seed capital did. So
yeah, raising money is not easy, but we decided to purposely, we were not fast in doing. So there's always a trade-off, right? With money, you can go faster, but certain things just don't go faster. Clinical trials and clinical testing is a yardstick you can't compress. And so we spent a solid 2 years in the clinic, back and forth testing on fiducials, but also on patients that consented in IRB studies. And we iterated and iterated, and then calibration and then testing of models. It just takes time. And every time you have a new thing, you got to put 50 people through it, but it takes time to actually recruit 50 people. And so there's always that tension. We just had to stay patient. We knew we had something special. And we just had to stay patient and just keep grinding it out until it was market ready. And in around October last year, we went public with our technology.
All right. So what advice would you have for founders that are, building hardware? You've learned a ton with iBot, Forum Labs. So like, what are some of the common mishaps that you should try to avoid?
This is very common. A very common problem is, especially with a startup, you want to churn out MVPs as quickly as possible. Now, the rate of hardware iteration is like an order of magnitude slower than software. And so sometimes you just have to make a guess, and it's hard. It's so hard to say no to stuff. Because if you just try to do all the things and all the features, you're just never going to quite finish, and you're never going to get it out there. And we try to take a very, I guess the word is over now, but like agile approach where with software, you can kind of ship something that's like good enough, 80% there, and fix it in post. And we initially took a very similar approach where we just put stuff out there, even though it was like not perfect yet, just so we can get as quickly as possible the validation we needed that we're on the right thing. And it's so hard as engineers, and especially for, like well-meaning, well-trained engineers that were learning in school that like you got to get A's on everything. It's hard to like ship B- things. It's so hard, but you have to force yourself to just do it, like send it, and that's extremely hard.
And we already talked about your funding, but like, what advice would you have for founders that are do have a hardware company and raising capital? Like, what are some of the lessons learned from that?
For hardware and raising capital,
Hmm.
yeah, that your projections are going to go a lot slower than you expected. That's just how hardware starts. Hardware starts slow. It's a slog, and the numbers don't really show up in big scale until year 3 or 4. And that's just, for the ones that are interested in doing a Kickstarter campaign, for example, know that successful Kickstarter campaigns have already gone through about a year and a half to 2 years of MVP development before that. Mm-hmm. And like if you look back 5 years or 10 years, the initial 3 years will look like nothing. At the time, though, it feels like everything. That's your whole world. And so you have to just be happy with the little milestones that you just keep grinding on and keep going.
Great advice. All right, 3 apps you can't live without. Can't be Slack, your calendar, or email.
Oh gosh, I should have prepared. 3 apps I can't live without. Well, number 1 is Reddit. That's probably my number 1 social media app. I got rid of all the other stuff. New York Times app. I do a lot of crossword puzzles. It relaxes my mind, especially when there's a lot going on. And yeah, of course, ChatGPT. Yes.
All right, well, how about a good book or podcast recommendation for entrepreneurs?
I wish I could give a good recommendation. What should I say? I don't read books, and I don't mean this in a. I'm not trying to show off at all. I wish I could read books. I've always had ADHD. I've been able to manage it, but I struggle with reading a book. However, if something extremely technical or manual or like a research paper, yeah, no problem.
How about outside of work? What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so I spend most of my time with my family. So it's I have 2 things going on in my life: iBot and then my family, and that's where I spend. I have 3 kids, and by the way, it's possible to start a startup, get it off the ground with 3 kids. It's not easy, but one day I think I realized that there's probably never a good time to start a company, so just do it.
That's great advice too. Yeah, no, it's a juggling act, and some of those personal interests may have to be on the sidelines for a bit, but it's well worth it.
Biggest regret is that I didn't start earlier. I wish I would have started the company 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Maybe the market wasn't ready for it yet. Like now, maybe now is, timing is everything, especially in startups too. So, maybe the timing is now.
Hmm.
Well, we'll find out because I'm very bullish. I'm like all fired up about this company. I'm like, this is going to be a next anchor company in the Boston tech scene, like the next, iRobot. That's a, consumer oriented type of product. I mean, it's obviously going to get, it's a B2B to C type of thing, but it's obviously an amazing, amazing product. So kudos to you and the iBot team. And thanks for sharing all the details about the company, what you're up to, your background story, and obviously all the great advice.
Yeah, thanks for your time. And yeah, one step at a time, right? We're always focused on just our next little milestone. And once in a while you get to look back and be like, oh my God, we actually did that thing. But yeah, we're focused on just the very next step right now.